Think about this scenario. Think about trying to plan maybe a dinner or a vacation for you and 10 friends. Now, think about this. Think about the strategic planning that would go into perhaps scaling a company to become multi-million dollar or $1 billion one day. Which scenario would you want? I'm not going to lie. The vacation and the dinner could very much be painstaking, could be time consuming for sure, especially knowing my friends. But for a multi-million dollar, for $1 billion company to sit down with executives, employees, and really get that plan, build that foundation, it could prove to be a lot more than what meets the eye. Well, Anthony and the team over at SME Strategy are here to really take that burden, that weight off your shoulders. They are really focused on forward thinking. They're really focused on driving companies, driving teams forward strategically. Because oftentimes we have these plans, we have these goals, we have these missions that we want to obtain and reach, but we could just be scatterbrained. We could just be moving in different directions, and we could not all be on one accord. Well, Anthony and the team are here to make sure that that is as easy as possible. But don't just take my word for it. Let him do the explaining, let him do the talking. So without further ado, enjoy episode 192, Forward Progress. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Down to Business podcast here with Tamar Turner. And whenever, I see the excitement, I'm just happy, man. I love quick turnaround. I love when people are just as enthusiastic and willing to get on the podcast as I am willing to have them. And I love when we're about to get into interesting things, interesting discussions, really just figure out how Anthony and what he does over on his end with SME Strategy could be of helpful to a lot of my business owners and entrepreneurs and creatives out there. So before we get into all things strategy, all things implementation, Anthony, how you doing today? How's everything on your end?
I am down to business, Tamar. I'm excited to be here, excited to rock with you, have a chat, and just support your people. So thanks for having me on. Doing awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for, joining us. And I'm definitely, I'm loving how you do that in there. No pun intended, but we will definitely get down to business with this. So Anthony, look, I know that we're going to have some people tapping in from your side. I know we're going to have some people tapping in from my side. But we're going to have my favorite amongst all of them. And those are newcomers. Those are people who probably know nothing about it somehow, some way in the rabbit hole of social media. They came across this podcast episode or something like that. So to bring everybody up to speed, to put everybody on the same page, even playing field, can you, one, just tell us a little bit about yourself? And then can you, two, just tell us what brings you on the Down to Business podcast today?
Perfect. I love that you're thinking about those folks and how you're there. So hi, everybody. Anthony Taylor. You run a company called SME Strategy. We facilitate strategic planning offsites and help teams basically drive their strategic plans forward. Just here to just help people move their teams, move their projects, move their companies forward. Just in the spirit of giving, truly, like everything that we got online is like accessible, because we don't want it to be a barrier to for anybody to access. So I'm just excited to share with your people, our people, we people, and just learn whatever we can learn out of it.
Absolutely. So with strategy, obviously, it's something that's very important, whether you're a business owner, whether you're just living life out here playing sports, involved in whatever you may be involved in some form or fashion, in some facet of life, you'll need a strategy. So particularly for the lane, the avenue that you're in, why was strategy something that you wanted to place on the forefront? Why did that become so crucial and important? Were you like a previous business owner, entrepreneur, and recognizing certain problems or just certain things that needed to be solved or needed to be addressed in a certain way? Were you just realizing that there was a common problem out there amongst business owners and entrepreneurs, and you kind of wanted to put yourself in those shoes, but also be able to solve and help them? How did you really get your start with wanting to highlight strategy so much?
That's a great question, and I don't really have a real direct answer on that one, so that's a new one for me. But I'll tell you, I just always think long term. I look forward. I have kind of a futuristic tendency about me. I had my first job when I was 9 years old, delivering newspapers. Then I said, like, hey, what gets paid the most money per hour? And that was bartending. So I became a bartender. Then I said, well, what's the next thing that gets paid the most per hour? And I want to travel. So I kind of became a consultant. And then when I was working with a mission-based organization, it's like a nonprofit, I was on 2 boards. And I found that they were very well-intentioned, as was I, but we were disorganized. And so then I found, strategic planning as a practice, going through my university. And then I was like, man, like, this is cool. Like, I like it. It helps people. I was a it's got that interpersonal thing as a facilitator. And I said, I can do this. And then looking futuristically and kind of say strategically, when I was 25, this is kind of 10, 15 years ago, I said, okay, I think that there's going to be a bunch of, call it baby boomers, like generationally, the folks that have been in the workforce for a long time are going to be out of the workforce in 10, 20 years. And then who's going to fall behind them? Like I was 25 starting a business at this point, and I said, it's going to be young folks like me that have no experience, because those folks that have been in those positions have been there for so long. So there's going to be a gap in terms of leadership, in terms of management. Not all of them are going to do MBAs and that kind of stuff. And I said, I think our company can fill that gap to support those people learning the stuff they've never learned or known before, in a challenging environment, and just make that available. And so since then, facilitated hundreds of strategic plans, helping organizations look forward, maximize their impact. And really, we've got 35,000 people visit our website every month. So we've got people all over the world that are like down to do business in strategy and down to strategic plans. So it's pretty fun.
Should have brought you on the podcast sooner. You got some catchy anecdotes there that I'm gonna have to steal and take under my wing. But no, I understand that and I get that. And I feel like your answer not being, like you said, a direct one per se, I think that that's kind of cool, just because too, like you recognize that it's kind of not an everlasting problem in a sense, but it's a problem that 9 times out of 10 you will face, you will go through, you will have to, even as, like I said, outside of the business ownership and entrepreneurial realm. It's just something that happens with life. It's just something that, we could have done this a little bit better, or thought about this, or planned a little bit better here. So SME specifically, at what point did you realize that you wanted to make a business behind this? Like you said, you were a very ambitious person just growing up, from delivering the newspapers to bartending to just becoming a consultant and everything. So at what point did you really tell yourself, okay, I see what I'm doing, I see the problem that I'm solving, I see what I'm addressing, I see who I'm helping, I see the prevalence in this, let's brand it, let's put it into business, let's build a team. And like you said, to now have 35,000 people visiting the website that month, how did you, one, start the foundation, set the foundation, but how did it get to this point now?
Well, you got to rock with things, right? So you're saying you just make choices day to day. You get thrown in situations personally, professionally, etc. So at the time, I was a marketing by trade kind of guy, writing business plans for folks. And then one of my mentors, Aaron Cruikshank, who's, shout out to Aaron Cruikshank, he's a good dude and does good market research, but that's an aside. He said, hey, you're not going to be able to make any money doing business plans. Like long-term sustainability, you're just not going to get to where you want to go. And I was like, that's a really good point. And so, like, to our listeners, you need to figure out, A, where you want to go, and B, is the vehicle that you have going to take you there. So for me, at that current time, at that juncture, I was like, if I want to go here, I can't take this path. I have to take that path. And so that's when I started doing strategic planning. That's when, putting it out there. And to be honest, I didn't want employees, because I used to have a coffee shop where a bunch of employees and a business owner that ripped me off. But it wasn't until a couple of years ago I says, hey, I just can't do all of the impact that I want, just myself. But the brand was kind of day one. The vision was day one. The team was like 10 years down the road. And then just since then, just keep trying to move forward towards, that place, if you get what I mean.
And I want people to understand something about what you just said, and then I'll even kind of tailor it to my approach as well. So something that you just said was that the team came 10 years later down the line, so for people who are not realizing something is that, he's talked about the magnitude to which his brand has been able to impact now, what they're doing, how many people are visiting, who they're helping, and we'll even get a little bit further into that. But, for 9 years, going on 10 years, it was just a thing of passion. It was just a thing of direction. It was just a thing of, making mistakes, trials and tribulations, good days, bad days, things that were working, things that weren't working. And I think as business owners and entrepreneurs, I'll be 5 years in November. I'm the only person that does this, and I think that's something sometimes people don't understand, is what goes on behind closed doors, what goes on behind the scenes, just that effort that you have to put in, that time that you have to put in, especially wearing multiple hats. I was even talking to one of my boys last night. I love the idea of delegation. I love the idea of sometimes just not having to do something. being able to push it off or like delegate that responsibility to someone else. And a point that he kind of made was that, it just becomes a thing of where you're so invested, you're so involved in the business that some things you just don't want to spend the time doing, or some things you wish that if you could automate it or do something else or have somebody else do it, it would work perfectly for you. But I also kind of, not really calling it a rebuttal, but then my reply to that was, well, I kind of like the idea of a one-man band, a one-man show. Now, I'm not telling you that I'm going to be doing this forever, y'all. I'm not. You're not going to see me 5 years from now still one-man band, one-man show. We're going to speak a team into existence. But what I'm also saying about that is that I realized that adopting these multiple roles, being in these multiple positions, wearing all the hats in my business has also made me realize the impact that each part plays. If I bring in somebody to do social media, well, I've done social media, so I know what that's going to entail. I know what it takes. I know posting on 5 and 6 different sites. I know changing the language, changing the format, changing how long something is, changing the graphic for a YouTube short versus an Instagram post or things like that. I know everything that goes into that. If I assign somebody in the AV space, I know that I can't stand editing, but it's just something that has to get done. I know that it can be painstaking when editing audio and you're interviewing somebody who says a lot. I know different things and different tips and different tricks, but I've also had jobs where you're paid a certain amount and you don't really feel like you're paid your worth because sometimes people can't do it. I feel like we've all held a job or worked for a company where our managers, our CEOs, these big names didn't necessarily know the day in the life, or didn't necessarily know how to handle certain responsibilities, or didn't really realize that, hey, if I wasn't here, if I would have called out or not showed, this wouldn't have gotten done somehow, some way. So I do love the idea of just persistence. Because 10 years, that's 10 years can go by just like that, but 10 years to dedicate yourself towards something and have really minimal to no help. I think that opens just my mind up to a different aspect, but it also just shows me just how much you believed in yourself, how much you bet on yourself, how much you weren't willing to turn back. Because I'm sure there were some days that were better than others. You might have lost motivation, might have not have worked on the craft to the degree with which you have wanted, but you still kept it going. And I love that. And now you have the team around you, and now the team only brings different perspectives, different ideas, more eyes, more. So that's so cool. All right. So as I was going through the website, something that was very interesting to me, and something that I feel like something that I feel like I may be even suffering from, is the multiple destination approach. I feel like, I look at the podcast and I want to do this, or I want to end here, or I want to end there. Can you just speak a little bit about how you were able to coin this term and just coin this idea, but then can you also speak to what SME strategy does to help businesses out of that and figure out where they really want to go?
Yeah, and for sure, and you might have to remind me of the question, but I just kind of want to take a quick step back. Is I wouldn't say that there wasn't anybody around to delegate to, because there was. And we did that. It wasn't until the scaling, but I will say that yes, the determination, because 10 years, 15 years in business is really hard. But it was actually a humble moment, because it was like, hey, what can I do that no one else can do? And it was like, is it sales or is it facilitation? Which I'll talk about that later. But fundamentally, I had to get over myself to say I'm the best in the world at this one thing, therefore no one else can do it. And when I got over myself, that was the thing that created the breakthrough, because then I said, well, I am the limit, not someone else. And so then we started bringing more people that could do the thing so that I could be in the area that I'm really good at. I am really good at that thing, but other people can do it. I'm not that hot shit. Okay, second question. Multiple destination trap versus one destination. We actually talked to a branding consultant who helped us with that. But at the end of the day, it was just fundamentally, hey, what is the problem that we solve? The problem that we solve is that different people in organizations, in teams, going in different directions, aiming up at a different place, and therefore aren't going to the same place, aren't focusing, don't have priorities. Because working with teams, that is ultimately the biggest thing. So that's why we said, hey, what is the problem? And then we call it a trap, because you actually don't know you're in it. So I imagine tomorrow, as you are going through that, and you're like, wait, am I in the multiple destination trap? Do I know where I'm going? And then instead of kind of giving you the answer, it makes you ask the question. And the question is really like where the juice comes from. And so we do that with teams, and then we just ask a bunch of questions to help them move from multiple destination trap to like one destination. We are going to this place. This is what it looks like when we get there. Like, pack your bags. You had mentioned kind of like Anthony-isms is, it's hard enough to plan a restaurant for 10 of your friends, let alone the vision of a multi-million-dollar company. So like, if it's hard to figure out where you're going to go eat, like, how hard is it to figure out like where everybody wants to go? And so that was like a big problem. That's kind of why we live in $40,000 meetings all the time. So yeah.
When you put it into perspective like that, yes, you are absolutely right. So yeah, figuring out where we want to eat, I'm not going to get so mad about that problem anymore when I got a business that I'm trying to scale to the moon and then some. So no, that's very interesting too. And I think it, for me, I think it was a lot of a prioritization thing. Like, I think I just wanted too many things at one time, and I wasn't really asking those proper questions. I wasn't really telling myself that all of this really can be umbrellaed under one thing, or all of this is going to really take this to get there, or maybe I should be doing this, or maybe I should implement strategies quickly from here, go from there. So, okay. I have a two-part question. How I ask the second part will depend on your first answer right now. So my first question, SME strategy is not niche specific. Like, you guys work across all industries.
Correct.
How? What does that look like for someone in the healthcare space versus the retail space versus the real estate space? How is it that, you can kind of take, would you say that there is kind of a blueprint to all of this, and you just tailor it towards whatever industry or whatever niche you're working with? How can, as listeners, as audience, even as potential clients, how can people ensure that they're getting the same experience throughout and not being slighted in any instance, or not being, because I feel like sometimes people they'll shy away from a company, a business, or service if they don't feel like that company has maybe testimonials or maybe examples or maybe proof that they've worked in my industry. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm doing real estate right now. Well, hey, I come across, I think that I could definitely do better with developing a strategy. I have a team around me that I think definitely I could use some management, some training, even some leadership coaching around that. But I see that you haven't worked with real estate in the past. So how do I really know that you know what you're doing?
How meta do you want the answer?
As meta as it gets.
Okay. I guess it's, do you want the service or do you want the outcome? And I wouldn't explain that to somebody else, because fundamentally the answer doesn't matter. But it's like, hey, if you go to a restaurant, does it matter if you're black, white, male, female, whatever? Does it matter if you're 70 or 60 or 40 or 30? No. If you go to a movie, is the experience any different? No. So does it matter? No. Now, more practically is, we specialize in facilitating a strategic planning process. Right? So doesn't matter what industry you are, because the process is always the same. The outcomes are always the same. The deliverables are always the same. It's just who's going through that process is the same. Now, understanding someone's industry is important, but because we're not telling anybody anything, we're just asking the questions, that it is less important. So we do understand the industry through surveys, through one-on-ones, and of course through like working with other organizations, so that we know kind of the important language and that kind of thing. But what we're really good at is strategic planning. What we're really good at is facilitating conversations with leadership teams. And personally, I've trained myself to be able to have any conversation with any person at any time, so it doesn't really matter. So yeah, it's the outcome, it's what people want, and we're helping them get to the destination, the solution, versus the how we solve the problem.
I like the way you put that. Now, okay, I want to take it a step further. So you pretty much are, you're pretty much not necessarily, like you said, you're not telling people what to do necessarily. You're just asking those questions to get them to think about things from a different lens, a different scope, a different approach. So now,
do you know why we do that?
I feel like it would be I feel like it would be too easy if you just kind of told people what to do necessarily. But then again, this may even kind of fall into my question. But then again, it's not always guaranteed that if you tell somebody what to do, how to do it, that they're going to do it. We could sit on this conversation. We could have a consultation. You could give me all the list of things to do. You could give me a to-do list. Literally do this, do this, do this, do this. I could just ignore it. I could just not do it. I could do whatever. Whereas if you put myself in the shoes and make me figure out the problem, I feel like I'm more honed to want to fix it or find a resolution from it. I feel like versus if you, it's almost like if you have I almost think about schooling and testing and things like that. If I'm just told that there is no open book, no study guides, no none of that, I'm gonna bust my behind to make sure that I take the notes, I understand, I'm showing up to class and everything like that. But if you tell me from the beginning, oh, this is open book, you can get notes from a classmate or something like that. Well, I'm just gonna, let me know when the test is. I'll show up. I'll see y'all then. Good luck to everyone. Enjoy class. Am I along the right track?
Yes, and let me ask you a slightly different way. Let's say tomorrow I was going to tell you to do something. I say tomorrow you have to do this thing. What would be your first reaction? I'm not going to do that.
I don't have to do it. Yeah, I don't have to.
I don't have to do. You can't tell me what to do. Even if it was the best freaking thing for you, you probably wouldn't do it because that's just how we're wired. And so if I try to tell somebody what they're going to do exactly what you did. They are going to resist. They're going to say no, even if it's the best thing for them. So instead of telling somebody to do, because it's not going to get done, is we ask people, and then fundamentally it becomes their idea versus our idea. If it's your idea, then you're going to do it because it's what you want. And so that small distinction is what makes the big difference with how successful we are. Because instead of giving people the best plan, we ask them, well, what's important to you? Where do you want to go? What does success look like? What's going to get in the way? And we just ask a bunch of questions. So I can go virtually 2 full days, 8-hour days in a room and not tell anybody a single thing. And they can be like, wow, that was so great. And I say, wow, that was so great. It actually is really great. They're super happy. We have amazing results. But it's because it was all their idea. All our facilitators do is prompt the questions, keep it tight, make sure that everybody is aiming in the right direction, and you can get incredible results when you ask the right questions.
Oh man, where have you been? I'm just saying, like, where have you been? But okay, so I want to I think you've even more so. I think I may even know the answer to this now, based off of your response right there. So, would you say that you found implementation from their end to be better because of your approach? Because like I said, I really feel like that I've talked to a host of different people in the consulting space, marketing, business coaching, everything, like leadership, everything. And I think that they would definitely agree to what you're saying, that a lot of times people can become defensive when told to do something or just not do it or want to resist or go the opposite way. Do you find that, like you said, that slight shift in the approach, because it is very just slight, but it makes all the difference? Do you find that to make implementation easier? Because I feel like, once you put the ball in someone else's court, well, not necessarily that, because I feel like even the approach of just telling them, that's still putting the ball in their court. Once you let them realize that the ball was in their court the entire time, do you find that they're more likely to kind of follow along? Once you ask those questions about what's important to them, what do they want to focus on, what's the end goal, what's the destination, do you find that then they're more willing, more eager to kind of take the approach to kind of fix the problem or to implement this strategy?
Yes and no, because knowing doesn't make a difference. So like, I have a gym membership. I know how to get fit. It doesn't mean I do it. So the difference is, like, what are the actions that you take? What are the systems that you have in place? What is the process that you follow? What is your accountability to yourself? What is your future? So then you start getting into the psychological stuff of it that is like ongoing. There's the processes and systems stuff, which is kind of incremental. You have transformational stuff, which is where you start having like really big breakthroughs. And then there's like literally just the stuff that people need to work through. If I'm going to accomplish X, what are those micro steps along the way? What are the micro systems I have to put in place? What are the agreements or whatever? So implementation works because it's consistent, because we're making the time, we're having teams focus on the conversations that they need to have, not necessarily the ones they want to have, but the important ones that are going to have those breakthroughs with teams. So whether that's breakthroughs in clarity, whether that's breakthrough in trust, whether that's a breakthrough in terms of, again, functionality or management. And we don't use the word breakthroughs liberally, but fundamentally that's what it is. I was on a call today. We were chatting with an executive team of a multi-$100 million company, and we did their strategy session last year. We have another one coming up in a couple months, and the entire focus of the call, 90 minutes, was just to discuss what's going to get in the way. What's going to get in the way in the next couple weeks that we need to be aware of. How do we front load talking about it so when we actually make our plan, we don't have any of that like unresolved stuff. And I'm not saying it's bad. There's just stuff. Every organization has stuff. Every team has stuff. There's just stuff. Stuff builds up. And so your ability as an individual and as a team to clear out the unknowns and make them knowns doesn't necessarily need to solve it, but you just can't be operating in this gray area. The faster you can do that, the more effective and clear you're going to be. So if you're in the multiple destination trap, you're spinning around in circles because you have too many unknowns. You don't need to have the answer. You just need to not be spinning.
Sometimes, I feel like people adopt that mindset of what do I need to do to completely solve this? And sometimes it's not necessarily, like you said, a problem that needs to be solved. You just need to sit still, be still, or stop moving, or just, one
You
thing.
need to take one step. What is the next thing I need to do to move forward, whatever? And if you can adopt that, you will be incredibly powerful.
And I would say now, like, even when people ask me like how I'm doing, what's going on, I always say one thing, one step at a time. It was even at one point I was telling people 1 minute at a time. If it's 5:48, I'm just trying to get to 5:49, and then I'll worry about 5:50 when it gets here. Not trying to think about 6:15, 8 p.m. I can't go that far. So
there's a risk to that too.
Risk to just 1 minute at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like there's a risk. You go. I want to minimize that risk, though. I found the 1 minute approach has a much smaller window for margin for error than the 2 hour or the hour approach. Now, SME strategy. Now, obviously, I've seen you host on other podcasts. I've seen what you do, even having your own podcast, which we'll touch on too. Obviously, you guys have had different clients. You speak at different places and events, testimonials, everything like that. What have you found to be the biggest form of promotion and marketing when it comes to the business, the service that you guys offer? How do people essentially find out about SME strategy and what they're doing and how they can help?
Google, organic search. And like for most people, they're like, what do you mean? Like it's unusual. But because I'm like an internet marketing OG, so to speak, if you Google something strategic planning related, we are likely going to come up in organic search, unpaid. Whether that's Google, whether that's YouTube, whether that's something else, you will likely find that. And then, of course, referrals and people who like working with us. That's kind of trippy because I could get a call from somebody in Baltimore and they'll be like, we got referred to you. And I was like, well, I've only been to Baltimore once, but okay, cool. What's up? And so, we've got a very cool global community of people. And then our podcast, touches every single country in the world. So, there was a good amount of time where, folks in Nigeria or Somalia or South Africa would just be like, hey, can I talk to you about something? Like, sure, let's do it. And so, that is my biggest form of marketing. And because I just gave it all away, I wasn't so worried about that side of it because I knew, again, going back to the long-termness, I knew it would pay back. Everything comes back.
Everything does come full circle. I'm a firm believer in that. And, I think too, especially when the impact is intentional and authentic, it will always be heard by the right people. It'll always spread. It'll always be, because I feel like when you said Google search, some of our foreign audience probably not, and when I say foreign, I mean younger more so, because my little brother, I always call them the social media. My little brother's 20, but I say there's a gap between you and I. We were still going outside, we were meeting our friends, we were texting, hitting multiple buttons at a time, and not one letter at a time now. But I tell him that I feel like everything with y'all is so tech based and so savvy based. I was even speaking on my last episode about how I don't like even having important files in my email. I like printing them off and having them in a folder or just something to access now. So a Google search to some people may just be so like, wow, that's it. Like I don't have to do anything like organic. I don't have to type in any specific words or do anything here. Or I don't have to. You mean to tell me they're not on Instagram or they're not on Twitter or I can't find them there? I can't do this and all that. Sometimes you just got to go to a website, or sometimes you just literally search in what you're looking for, almost like a phone book. Go through all those pages. You figure out what you need, what you want, make that call accordingly. So, all right. I don't like to make assumptions, but I have to ask: who does the strategic planning for SME?
We do. Because we, in the words of the Migos, we walk it like we talk it, So we definitely we do our own strategic planning. We follow the same cadence. Our team does it, and we do it for ourselves.
See, I didn't want to assume that, so I'm glad you put it there. I would have made a rightful assumption though. Now, I would say in the space that we are in now, and I feel like with so much going on, with so many people offering courses, with being coaches, with saying, hey, I can do this, or hey, you want to turn your business completely around and do everything like that. Do you feel like there are any misconceptions to what SME does to the space and the industry that y'all are operating in? Do you feel like people kind of come to y'all with certain maybe notions, stereotypes, or understandings that just aren't true?
I am confident that the answer is yes. And we have designed our marketing to be explicit. So if somebody goes to it, they should effectively say hell yes or hell no. So that they should see it and say, these folks are talking to me about this thing. We don't consciously market on social media, with the exception of LinkedIn, but even LinkedIn, because most of that is like attraction. Like I don't want to interrupt somebody's day, maybe to a fault of my own. I'm like, I want somebody to be knowing what they want, to be looking for it, and then to be like, hey, are these the folks to do it? But even then, in terms of like the other day, we were having a conversation with somebody who wanted a specific methodology instead of this specific methodology. And I said, well, we won't do that in this case because it will not help you. We won't be able to promise the outcome if we change how we do it. And so there could be a misconception there in the sense that they just think that we just do whatever. Or, for example, there's other meeting facilitators. But most of the time, people have a good idea of what we do because we give all of the information away and we just kind of let people be like, hey, like we want to buy from you. We want to work with you because what you do is what we want. And then that's why we do so much on YouTube, etc.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that a lot. Now, and two, because I feel like sometimes people just need to take that approach. Like I feel like you give everybody their own clean slate. And I feel like with a lot of industries, there can be certain companies, people that make a bad name for the industry as a whole. And it kind of just turns you off from what it is that they're doing, what they offer, these services. I feel like the word course, I have a love-hate relationship with it these days because I think everybody has a course for something. If somebody inboxed me today, hey, if you like what I'm doing, or if you want to build out your so-and-so to 6-7 figures, if you just download my course or just do whatever. And it just starts to make me think about this gatekeeping energy and just all of that goes into it. Now, thinking about you personally, or you can even speak to this from the SME perspective, what do you love most about what you do?
I'm going to chew on that. We have a course. There is a place for courses. It's just a matter of, is the course going to deliver what it promises it's going to deliver? And are you going to get your money's worth? For us, we are not cheap. Our course isn't cheap, but we're confident in our course, in our content, in our materials, because we are so laser focused on what we are versus what we're not. That we can confidently say, this is what we offer, this is how much it could be worth to you, this is why it costs this much money. And the same for courses. If you're just trying to make money off of people, which is fine, but if you're doing it at the expense of people, that's just not how we roll. What can you rephrase the question? It was, what do I love most about the work that I do, or what was the exact phrasing?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be about like the work specifically. It could be, I was saying you could speak from the SME perspective, you could just speak from Anthony itself. But yeah, what do you love most about whether it be strategy, whether it be about working with SME, the team you have around you, podcast, everything? What do what would you say really stands out to you, sticks out to you?
Man, okay. First of all, love my team. My team is phenomenal. They are great. They are great partners. I'm so grateful to be surrounded with them, and they are just dope. And we're doing our thing, and it's awesome. Everybody looks forward to Monday, so that's what we're up to. I love getting to facilitate. I love having conversations with people. I really love at the end of it, and they're like, "Wow, we did all of that in 2 days. Like that was incredible." I love getting to travel. I travel and I get to see cool stuff. I'm going to be in Chicago in 3 weeks and get to add another baseball stadium to my list. I've got to facilitate strategic planning for the Reserve Bank of Fiji. I get to work with incredible organizations across Canada and the US. I get to go to dope hotels. It sucks at times, don't get me wrong, but I'm grateful for the work that I do. And familially, I'm in this like growing family stage in my life, and just pales in comparison to, or everything else pales in comparison to that. That is like the freaking best. Yeah, and at the same time, there's just so much required to support the life that I get to have, that I'm incredibly grateful and fortunate to have. And even through the struggles, the outcome is worth it. And there's a quote that I think is from the Bible, but Stephen Colbert recently shared it, is to love is to suffer, that there is no love without suffering. And to me, it is my greatest gift. All of the suffering that I have endured and continue to endure, and we don't have to talk about that, because I have so much love in my life from people, from the work that I do, from the experiences. And so incredibly grateful, incredibly fortunate, truly blessed to be where I'm at. So I don't know if that was the answer you're expecting to get, but that's the one you got.
Well, honestly, you've kept me on my toes the entire interview, so I've learned to expect the unexpected very early. But no, that's beautiful. I need to also I need to find a team that look forward to Mondays. So we're gonna have to figure that out and look forward to that, because I don't know too many people who are amped up and motivated about a Monday. But no, I think that when you look at the journey, when you look at everything that you've been able to encompass with your experience, with just the business, just the personal, professional, everything like that, I think that's an amazing perspective to have, and I love that, and I hope that it not only continues but amplifies, from the personal perspective. Check out more dope hotels, visit more cities, put more baseball stadiums under your belt. Because I've never been to Chicago, so I have to add them to my list just the same. But now, I love, as I was speaking to in the beginning of the interview, one of my favorite types of people who listen to the podcast are newcomers. Well, before I even get to that question, why a podcast? How did that get started? What is the nature of the podcast? Because I'm pretty sure we have some avid podcast listeners. People are always looking for different shows to tap into, different niches, new information. So tell us a little bit about how you got that started, what you guys specialize in, and what you're doing. Yeah.
So you can see me grimacing, but wryly smiling. So basically, I started the podcast by mistake. I was writing my second book on strategic planning. It was 2016, so I didn't know that much about strategic planning relative to where I am now. And so I said, well, how am I going to make this book bigger? And I said, well, I should interview some people and put it in a book, which, several years later became commonplace, but at the time was innovative. And I wasn't doing it because I was trying to become an Amazon bestseller. I was like, I don't have enough stuff to put in this damn book. And so I was like, okay, well, at this point, I might as well record the conversations, because if I'm going to get the transcription or whatever, I have to figure that out. And I was like, well, shit, if I'm recording this stuff, I might as well publish it. And so that's how the podcast started. And now we're getting close to 300 episodes. I get the privilege of, thank you, talking to dope people from around the world. And yeah, we got some, it's a good podcast. We have good guests is the hashtag of the podcast. So.
An accidental podcast that leads to nearly 300 episodes. I take my hat off, and once again, it just tells me why they expect the unexpected when I ask certain questions here. But no, that's very dope, and I feel like the podcast, from a perspective of when you bring on different guests, it really opens the realm of podcasting. It allows you to meet different people, be in different spaces, get a load of their audience, then you get recommendations, then other people, because I tell people all the time, like, yes, I can talk on here, I don't mind talking, but if you get to see somebody else, if you get to hear from somebody else who you never would have met or talked to or connected with or learned something from, to me, that's invaluable. So I love that a lot. Now, in speaking about what I was saying in the beginning about, I love newcomers. I love people who know nothing about Down to Business, nothing about tomorrow, maybe even nothing about my guests. A lot of times, what they kind of do. But I love the fact that they can find us at some point in the journey, whether you're on episode 1, 21, 111, 180. It doesn't really matter. I feel like you haven't really missed a beat. So for people who are tapping into this episode, for people finding about SME strategy for the first time, but wanting to continue along the journey, follow along what you guys are doing, is there anything that they can expect as we continue to move through the year? Any new projects or anything that you guys are working on or diving into, testing out or trying? Obviously, we don't want to spoil anything, ruin any surprises, but something we love on the Down to Business podcast is just giving people something to look forward to, something to tap into, something, even to learn. So is there anything on your guys' end that you can kind of make us aware of, or anything that we should be looking for on the horizon?
Sweet. I love that. You heard it here first. Yeah. What are we excited for? We're streamlining our implementation services to just make it, we're doing fewer of them to make them better, which is a good strategic prioritization lesson. We are going to take our courses. We have 2 courses, one on alignment, one on implementation. And our plan is to bundle them with group coaching, which is not new, but we said, hey, how can we actually add the most value to our people? How can we support them along their journey? And we basically said, by doing it in small bits, it's not doing what we want to do. So we're going to, at least the plan is, charge more, put it together, offer more value, and support people like more fulsomely in moving their plans forward. So that's exciting. We are adding 1 new team member near the end of the year to just do some more work in the US, because that's where the demand is, where the folks need us. And I say those are the top 3. And then just personal stuff. But yeah.
All right. So they're working, they're thinking, they're bundling, they're doing everything, but definitely something to look forward to. Definitely. But I also love that question too, because it also lets me know that as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as creatives, we're always thinking, we're always trying to be ahead. We're always thinking about next. And I feel like sometimes people see us or see so much of what's going on in the current, in the now, or what we've been able to do or accomplish, or maybe even highlight, that you don't realize, yes, we're posting this, we're showing you this, we're doing that, but we're already working on that. We're already debuting that. We're already we're thinking about orientation for our new employee, already thinking about where we can hit in the US, tailor traffic. So it just goes to show that never ending, just that wheel that's just always turning in some form, in some capacity. And that wheel could sometimes lead to the multiple destination trap. So you see how we tie all of this together, y'all? You see how we're bringing this all in and doing all of that? I love it.
Do you know who the worst person is for criticism about not looking forward?
Who is that?
It is the self. Most high-performing people are always looking forward, and they don't look backwards. Mm-hmm. And so they're so critical of themselves for what they're not doing versus actually saying, whoa, what did I accomplish in this 12 months, 2 years, 3 years? It brought me to the problems I have now. And so by focusing that energy not on what you don't have, but how far you came and like what is the next thing, it'll support you in better decision making and not like dwelling in the we suck, things are problems, but moving into the like, okay, how do I get to my next place?
Okay, yeah, you're speaking to me now. You're calling me out, but you're only one. So no,
I see you.
Come on now, I'm trying to hide. Okay.
Okay.
No, seriously, it has been, just for me, it's been enlightening. It's been enlightening to realize that it's been enlightening to hear the approach, to hear, I've talked to a lot of different people who are in the consulting space, in the planning space, but not necessarily from a strategic perspective. But I feel like a highlight of the last couple of episodes have been strategy, and have been that while things are always changing around you, while even the sun is going down, websites are changing, social media is doing what it wants to do, markets are going wild, having a strategy, being prepared for the worst, but obviously praying for the best will always be a thing. But having something that you can look back to, fall back on in a sense, or have something that you can, even implement and pass along to a team, because a lot of what you guys do too is from a team management perspective, from having people around you corralling everybody to all kind of be on one separate page, because sometimes the team can have you move in different directions. Some people have ideologies here, passions here, likes and dislikes here. So I love to see everything that SME is doing. I love the creative approach behind it. And I love the humor, obviously. Like I said, you've been throwing some things. I mean, some things that I got to take for myself when I replay this and use for future episodes. So I got to credit you for sure for that. But definitely love all the work that you're doing and looking forward to seeing, what's to come. Now, before we give people all the spaces that they can find out about SME, tap in with you guys, follow along the journey, even utilize some of your services, do you feel like there's anything that we have not touched on today, or maybe even any last words that you want to leave out there for business owners, entrepreneurs, whoever's going to come across this episode in some way?
I mean, again, it's another one for you, Tamar, but truly for our listeners, and I'll say I've been there. I've been where I think some of our listeners are, right? I've been learning. I read these books. I got here because I, learned it, and I just ate poop for a while and just went through the thing, man. So, I've made more mistakes than I've counted success. So if you're listening and you're in that place, I feel you. It's going to be okay. Just don't quit. And so somebody I talked to say, hey, how did you get this far in your business? I say, I just didn't quit. But the thing I will tell to you and your listeners in the spirit of strategy is that you cannot control the wind, which is what you're kind of talking about before, but you can adjust your sails. And so don't worry about all the noise around there. Just focus on you. Focus on getting you to wherever you need to go. The other one that some people like, and it's just, I think, an Einstein quote, is that you cannot judge a fish's intelligence by its ability to climb a tree. And so take those two things for whatever it's worth and just stick to your plan, do your thing, move forward. You will get there as long as, you got the smarts and you don't quit. So I appreciate you having me. I appreciate, your listeners for listening and just rocking with us, and just really look forward to how you can help me is you tell me in a year, 2 years, everybody listening, you just be here's what I was able to do in the 2 years. You come back to me, you tell me what you're celebrating, and that'll be the best. That'll be the best thing for me. So what you can do is you can tell me how successful you were in 2 years after thinking more strategically and thinking long term.
Holding myself to it. I'm holding all of my listeners to it just the same. So yes, we will reconvene in a year to two, and hopefully we'll have a lot of accomplishments, a lot of things to check off the list, but also reflect on just the same. So before we officially close out, can you just tell us the best places to reach you, find out all things SME related, follow along the journey, website, give us everything you got?
Yeah, you can find me personally, AnthonyCTaylor.com. Anthony C. Taylor, the letter C, not Spanish. You can go to SMEstrategy.net, SMEstrategy.net. If you basically Google anything strategic planning related and put SME strategy at the end, and you got a sample 2-day strategic planning agenda, strategic planning template, that kind of stuff. So tons of free tools. But ultimately, just connect with me on LinkedIn and be like, hey, this is what I'm up to. This is what I'm here to do, and just happy to support the community and tell you about our programs and that kind of stuff. So yeah, connect on LinkedIn. It's the best place.
All right, y'all. Y'all heard it. Y'all got it all. Call to action from the, think about things from a more strategic perspective, to seeing what you can do, to asking the right questions, to that focus, to, I think just realizing that, we need to hone in, that we're not necessarily off track or off our path. Sometimes we're just trying to do too much at one time. Sometimes we're not really thinking about what's in front of us, or one thing at a time, one step at a time, 1 minute at a time, as Tamar does it. So no, Anthony, the pleasure was honestly all of mine. Thank you to the team. Best of luck on the expansion, and please let us know from the podcast perspective if there's anything that we can do to further support. Obviously, we are tapped in with you guys for the rest of the journey, so looking forward to following along to that. But to everybody else out there, for the people on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, however you're hearing this episode on your favorite platform or anything like that, I love y'all. Thank y'all for joining us live. This has been another episode of the Down to Business podcast, here with Tamar Turner. All right. So